Welcome to the Music Prophet.
I would never have thought that it would have lasted this long, but I think people really, really like the idea of jazz music. Even, I think everybody, when you talk about jazz, it means something different to every single person. They have a different, like some people might think, oh yeah, that's big band, that's in the mood. Yeah, that's, or somebody says, yeah, that's like Frank Sinatra, similar to what we just listened to, like Paul Marinaro, or maybe it's Miles Davis, fusion.
Right, they go back to the names they recognize.
Yeah. It's amazing how many different kinds of jazz there can be.
Is that a struggle then when you make the lineup to make that balance between recognizable figures and people like Capocco?
Yes, it is. It is a little bit. And I have to look towards, what other people want to listen to, not just what I think as the artistic director of Jazz Sudbury Festival. And sure, I have a good background in jazz, and I'm really steeped in standard jazz and contemporary jazz, and I've done some fusion as well. But I have to look even further and see, okay, what other types of jazz music that maybe I don't listen as much to that people might be interested in. So, that's why when you wanted to come and have me on your show, I thought, well, maybe you should come on my show. And it's funny because you picked music that I really like as well, but it's new stuff, so it's very, very interesting that I already knew some of those names that you gave me. And I thought, wow, that's really neat. I must be thinking the right way.
Yeah, because I'm really glad I didn't know what he would expect, because also on the playlist there was things like Madlib and some experimental avant-garde jazz that, it's rare to find in Sudbury, let alone anywhere. So it's nice that you're able to find those pieces that you could connect with.
Exactly.
Actually, maybe, but is that something, and the experimental music, avant-garde, is something that, at least my audience, they likely don't know a lot about. So would you be able to sort of expand on what the difference between avant-garde and standard jazz would be?
Yeah, I guess the standard contemporary jazz, if we say those words, or, we're thinking it's definitely swinging. It's got a beat. It's going along really solid. You can dance to it. You can tap your foot to it. You know where the beat is, and you don't have to know anything about music or the harmony or anything or understand the complexity of it, but you enjoy it. And that's because when music was the most popular, it was in the 40s, actually, and that was the big band era. So all those big bands played all this music by Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller, Duke Ellington, and Count Basie, and all those great big bands. And the reason that everybody liked it is because they could dance to it. So it was very standard. You knew, that they're going to do this and they're going to do this. There's not going to be really, really long solos or anything that's going to get wild or anything. It's going to be very standard, because you all have to hear that drummer. That's got to be there all the way through. So the standard contemporary jazz, that's what we think of. That's what we think of. Before that, we had traditional jazz. That would be more like music coming from New Orleans, and we'll be playing some of that when we parade around on Saturday for the Jazz Walk. We've got heavyweights brass band coming along with my Nickel City Dixie Stompers, which is going to be really, really great, and also the Shuffle Demons as well. But it's fusion, and that's what's happened in New Orleans too. Now, when we think of all the black bands that happen down in New Orleans, and it came from the culture of black people. And, it has fused now and using hip hop and rap and ideas like that and funk. When you think of funk music, you go to New Orleans. That's where the true funk, and, Dr. Hook.
What was the draw initially? What got you into it?
Well, I guess it was the improvisation thing. I mean, I started in high school like lots of people did, and playing clarinet in the band, and I'd practice and practice and practice, and I got tired just doing the scales and doing the exercises in the books and stuff, and I started making stuff up myself. And just thought, well, I think I'll just try and make a song or make some lick or something, and then it was really, I liked playing like that and didn't think about it like what I was doing, that it was improvisation or that it probably wasn't jazz at all at that point. But the more I kept doing that, and then my concert band master, he decided to start a little stage band, and so then I started playing a little bit of saxophone, and then I got into jazz in a big way and started buying records and listening to different players and finding out who's who and who's Charlie Parker and who's Zoot Sims and who's Lester Young and who's Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and all that kind of stuff. So,
which seems like, I guess that would be a very natural transition, especially with saxophone. The songs that you can play and enjoy in a saxophone are hard to find if you don't delve into jazz.
Yeah. I think, I mean, saxophone is also known as a good classical playing music, but it certainly became much known better with jazz music, and saxophone is certainly known now as one of the mainstays of instrumentation for jazz. So that's true, definitely. So then there was lots of music for me to listen to if I go to the record store and start to, look for something, and it's like, okay, there's a saxophone, and pick it up, have a listen to it, and that's probably about the same way now that I've done research and became a teacher and an educator myself, and started to realize, that's the way the first jazz players really started to learn, was by going to the record store, and if there weren't recordings, then they would go to the clubs and the gigs where these things were happening, and they'd listen to these players and then go home and try to woodshed what they were doing and try to figure it out. But certainly recording was fantastic, and that was the opportunity where somebody could take the record, take it home, and listen to it over and over and over. And that's what I did. I ruined so many albums over the years. And I know lots of us had, even though not trying to learn the music, but certainly us musicians that wanted to learn how to play, you had to, okay, pick up the needle, put it back, do that track again, and you probably scratched it a little bit, and you just keep doing that, and but that's the way all the jazz players started to learn how to play.
But did you have the notes and all the sheet music then, or were you just going by ear? At
that point, I was just listening to what that player was playing, and then I would try to play along with him, and so that was something that I had to learn how to do. I had to learn how to get in tune with that recording wherever it was played and when. And so now I'm at home in my living room, on my clarinet or my saxophone, and I have to try and get in tune and make sure I'm in tune on the track. And then I try to play what he plays, and then I try to play something different that's similar to what he plays. And pretty soon you're able to actually play a little bit longer on that track, then maybe at first you can only do maybe 10 seconds or 15 seconds because you don't know what the heck this guy is doing. Mm-hmm. And he probably has so much more technique than I did as a young player. So certainly learning how to read music and doing all the exercises and things that I did do, and I did have some technical ability that allowed me more easily to do this, definitely. But the great jazz players in the beginning, they did not read music, and they didn't go to, conservatories and have teachers, and some of them did, but most of them, it was just someone else older played that instrument, and they got few lessons from them. But Louis Armstrong couldn't read music.
Right, which is a lesser known fact for people.
Because you listen to him and they say he's like a genius, you know. It's just, I mean, he was similar to Paul McCartney.
Right.
He doesn't read music.
And wasn't Miles Davis like that as well? Or
Miles,
he was technically trained?
He was the other way around, yes. He was very, very well trained. Yeah, he came from a rich family. His father was a dentist, and he went to Juilliard, one of the best music schools in the world, even to this day. But he didn't stay there. He wanted to learn jazz, and he wasn't learning it at the school, so he went to the clubs, and he found Charlie Parker.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So was that sort of growing up then, when you had those idols and you started imitating them, did you find that the music around you wasn't fulfilling, or did you start to really learn and understand the culture around you locally even more? It's
a little bit of both. Everybody has their little idea of how this works, and I was playing in a rock band, you know, when I was in university, and I played saxophone, but it was mostly rock, you know. We were playing Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and you know, Chicago, those types of horn band,
right?
You know. And some of my friends were really, really good players, but they weren't interested in the jazz music that much. They were more into just playing, you know, this rock music that we played, you know. But I was interested in what's really going on. How are these guys playing, and how are they making those improvisations and just making this stuff up on the moment? So I was really, really interested in that.
Right, because that sort of reminds me of even the Poetry Jazz Cafe in Toronto.
Okay.
Where a lot of it's in Kensington, and it's this place that when you walk by it when it's closed and it looks like it's run down and renovated.
Well, when the Kensington Market Jazz Festival happens, they have all the great guitar players. It's at the what's it called again?
They call it the Poetry Cafe or
Poetry
Jazz.
Cafe. That's what it is. And,
right.
And so when I went there, they had concerts or gigs during the Kensington Market Jazz Festival, and that was one of the venues.
Right, because I remember the first time I went, which was last November, and it was very much experimental.
Yeah.
You went in, there's no place to sit.
Okay.
And you're just watching the band, and and you can tell that they're improvising.
Yeah.
And adding in, and the drummer is just a session drummer. And the bassist is maybe friends with the singer.
Yeah.
But not that close of friends. And you can see them adding things. And so I see what you mean by it's just improvisation as you grow.
Yeah.
You have the Laurentian band, you have the Dixieland. But do you have a goal with the styles that you try to adapt?
I don't know. I find it so easy, especially with jazz music. There's so many different places you can go really easily. That it's just really easy. You say, well, what do you want to do? Just think up an idea. Let's do something associated with Oscar Peterson. You know, why not do that? Because he's probably one of the most well-known jazz pianists in the world, and he happens to be Canadian.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easy to put something on by Oscar Peterson. Blue Train, you know, I mean, there's so many different songs that he's written, and we can work on that, and then we can go in tangents from there. I mean, Sir Oliver Jones was another great pianist who was well known, to be a colleague of Oscar Peterson. They both lived in Montreal and played in Montreal. And so then Oliver came to Sudbury, and he would do concerts with us, and it was just amazing. So I thought, well, why don't I do that? So I'll have Oliver Jones come, and he'll play with my Laurentian Jazz Combo.
Right.
You know, it was probably one of the greatest things that happened to those young students, you know, probably for a long, long time.
Because it's an incredible opportunity, yeah.
Well, it was great for me too, you know. It was like, you know, but I can't imagine being, 18, 19, 20 years old and to have this like amazing musician come and play with us, and it's like, wow, and then do a concert, like, wow, that's amazing.
But that's great though, because with the Jazz Sudbury connections, you're able to give students opportunity to learn from some of the best, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
At the same time, how are you able to create the teaching environment that you had, the experimental and copying other musicians, when now it's just there's so much out there to learn by yourself without experimenting?
Well, the only thing that I can do is suggest things to my students, So one evening I might go in for the combo rehearsal, and I go, okay, everybody just put your instruments down, and I'm going to turn the lights off, and I'm going to play a track of music by whomever. Oscar Peterson, Miles Davis, doesn't matter. Steps Ahead, it can be, Jacob Collier, doesn't matter what it is. And we just let's just listen to this music and really listen to it. So sometimes I have to stop, because it's difficult, isn't it, for even you and I to put a track on and just listen to the whole thing and not talk, right? Because we want to talk. And, wow, did you listen to that trumpet? But in order to really listen to it, you shouldn't. And that's tricky. It's tricky to do. So I talk about passive listening. So passive listening is like what you and I are doing now. It's what most people do. Okay? Most music, that's why pop music is kind of watered down now to the point where it's just, it's elevator music. It's like music at the mall. So like that's what music is to most people. That's all they know. They don't really know what it's really like until they go to something live.
Right.
Once they go to something live and they see it with their eyes and they see it through their ears at the same time. And let's put it this way too. What if you're blind? Don't you think it's still important to go to a live thing, or to listen to it on your radio or your computer or your headphones? If you're blind, you're going to know the difference. You're going to know the difference immediately if that's live music. You're going, that's live. That's happening here right now. So that's something that's really, really important. And it's something that's probably we're losing that, probably a little bit. And that's why summertime is really, really good almost everywhere, because there's going to be lots of live music somewhere. There's going to be festivals all the time.
Right, because you're able to teach active listening.
Exactly.
Especially, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I try to do. I say, okay, let's really listen to this track, and then we'll talk about it. Then we'll talk. What did you hear?
Right.
And then easily, every individual's probably heard something different, depending on what instrument they play. So then I'll say, okay, we're going to listen to this track again. Don't listen to the instrument that you play, because that's probably the first thing you're going to do. Why don't you listen to, if you're a drummer, why don't you listen to the saxophonist? And if you're a saxophonist, why don't you listen to the piano player? And try to not listen to everything else, just listen to the piano player. So that's a selective, listening.
And so then you're fully avoiding your influences in what inspires you to discover something new.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
As a final question, because this is something that I've had conversations with drummers and other musicians, is that when they hear music, they often hear the influences, which makes it so you can never really have an active listening period. So do you find that, where you hear the influences of the new artist coming up more than the actual song?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. It's a tough question. The first thing that comes to mind in a way that I should try to answer your question is the difference that happens for me is because I'm an instrumentalist. And I don't listen to the lyrics very much. But that's because I'm a saxophonist. I play flute, I play clarinet. And so I'm listening to the lead, the melody, you know. So when I'm listening to Ella Fitzgerald, I know the words are there, but it's kind of in the back of my mind. What I'm listening to is her melody, you know. So 3 little words. 3 little words. Da 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 da. I don't even know the rest of the words.
Right, because you're only listening to the
I'm
small
listening,
parts.
but I can sing that melody because I know it, you know, because I've heard it. But I've heard it many, many times by many singers, but I don't know the words. It's called 3 little words, and that's all I know. So how do you like that?
Actually, that answers it really well, and I'm glad that you were able to come on the show. And
well, Kyle, I'm glad that you were able to come on my show as well.